Hello, and welcome to the Green Grassroots of Football with me, Andy Glover.
Me, Mark Winter.
And I would just like to thank our sponsor, Rachel's Bookkeeping, for all your bookkeeping needs. So Ben is still not with us this episode as we're recording 2 episodes on the same night, and he's packing and getting ready to take his team away on tour. We're still in Summit Pavilion, we're still out on the landing upstairs, so there's still noise in the background in case you can hear it. Children going past, adults talking very loudly. They've got no sort of sense of decorum for us, have they? What's going on in here?
No podcast etiquette.
Exactly. We welcome back Ben Merry to help us discuss small-sided games in the wider context of matches. So, hello Ben.
Hello again.
Thanks for coming back again. I mean, it's all that way, after going down and getting a drink.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. So, in the last episode, we looked at small-sided games and their training effectiveness. In this episode, we'll look more at the practical application in terms of the match itself, as well as why the FA introduced these formats. This time I'll start with a quote. "Technique is not being able to juggle a ball 1,000 times. Anyone can do that by practicing. Then you can work in the circus. Technique is passing the ball with one touch, with the right speed at the right foot of your teammate." And that was Johan Cruyff, and I think small-sided games work with that obviously improves that really well. So for this episode, I'll start with a bit of history. In 2010, the Football Association launched the FA Youth Development Review, a document spanning 25 recommendations based on research and feedback from across the country. Then on the 28th of May 2012, the FA formally ratified some of the recommendations of the Youth Development Review. These amendments were developed over the 2 years of research, consultations and listening to those involved in the youth game, most importantly those that play, which are the children. These positive changes were put in place to improve enjoyment, fun and with an increase of involvement in the game as a whole. And development of young players allow more touches and a better proportion pitch. The changes within the FA's Youth Development Review were aimed to make youth football better for everyone involved. The FA recognised that they presented some challenges in the short term, but with help could make football better, more relevant and more enjoyable for our young players. The changes were phased in from 2013-14 season, but the law changes to mini soccer that included a retreat line, the option of quarters for development matches and roll-ins for under 7 and under 8 were optional for season 2012 and 13. The 2014-15 seasons introducing the final mandatory changes. This was about a modern, child-friendly approach to youth football, challenging the win-at-all-cost mentality that was stifling development and enjoyment for young people. Working together with a proactive attitude, adults could help develop a better learning environment for young people that put their needs at the centre of the process. So there's a bit of history why the FA did it. They had already looked at places like, I think it was Holland, Spain, Germany, which you alluded to in the last episode.
Yeah.
So, matches.
I'll go and put it back to you. Obviously, you're now on to your 4th team.
Mm-hmm.
So you were managing pre this period.
Yes.
So how do you find the difference now, the modern between then, pre-2013 and now?
It's interesting. I can remember my first team, and my first team, we were playing 10-a-side, and we were just put in divisions, and we happened to be playing against a team who turned out to be one of the best teams in Bristol, and we lost the game 10-0, 11-0. And they had this one boy, and he'd get 20, 25 yards out, he just hit it hard and high, it'd just go half a foot under the crossbar.
What age group was that?
Under 10s.
Under 10s.
11-a-side, and that was it. It was like, well, what can we do? As soon as he gets anywhere near, that's all he was doing. But I think back then, even then, we were still playing 7-a-side as under 9s and under 8s.
Right.
But that was as soon as we hit under 10s.
It went straight to
11-a-side. Yeah.
And a big pitch.
Big pitch.
Yeah, full side.
But it was this team, wasn't it? This was the first team that did this.
Yeah.
So my second team, again, it was two that was a 7-a-side into 11-a-side. I think I had a better side, but we were better prepared for it. But by then, the leagues were better prepared. Because the first team, it was like all the teams, we're gonna just jumble you up and go A, B, and C. And that was my first team. That was it, A, B, and C. No matter how good or bad you were. So we had some really tough teams, and like I said, we had the team who ended up winning it, the A division 3 years running, and we had some teams who were really poor, and that was 3 divisions going through. Whereas by the time the second team came along, they kind of started saying, "Send us your results."
Yeah,
By
we need to
10
have
years
a,
later.
need to
So
change this a little bit.
yeah, so by the time we went
Yeah.
from 7-a-side to 11-a-side, it was in a division that we were much more suited to. So those 30-yard shots by a 10-year-old weren't happening. So it was much better, and the big pitch. You still get. I can remember playing as a 9-year-old on a big pitch, and I was right back. And there were games where my team were really good. I like to stand there and watch my attackers run up the pitch and score. Oh yay! And I'd walk back to right back, and we'd kick off, and I'd walk forward as they ran up and scored, and I'd walk back to right back. It was like,
Go again.
am I going to touch the ball today?
Yeah.
And once or twice I would. And then this team. I think was this the second year they brought it in.
Something like that.
Second or first or second year. The thing I struggled with, and the thing I still don't like, is the 5 to 7 to 9 to 11. So 2 teams of 5, okay, and we usually run with 9 or 10 players per team of 5. This is boys, so I'm talking about boys here.
Yeah.
Because obviously I ran boys. Then 2 teams of 7, and all we did was we just kept the same number of players. So instead of having 3-4 subs at 5-a-side, we've now got 2 subs at 7-a-side. We then had to make a decision: do we go out and find more players to go 9-a-side, or do we go with one very
Bring it back
large
to one
squad at 9-a-side and go with 2 goalkeepers, or get rid of 1 goalkeeper? And we decided to go with 1 big squad, and it was a struggle. And we actually made a decision. I was halfway through that year to go, okay, actually, what we need to do is start taking, because I wouldn't invest in players. And we started making decisions. It was halfway through the season we were struggling in terms of results, and I started making decisions. Okay, actually, we're going to go. You 3 or 4 players. I'm really sorry, but you just are not. You just haven't developed in these 4 years, 5 years. I'm just going to say I'm really sorry. You can't play unless we are desperately short. And then the players left. I'm still going to be resting 2 or 3 of you every week.
Yeah.
And
it is difficult, and this said the boys, and again with the girls, I think, like we alluded in the last episode, you go back to the girls, but the older they get, you get the drop off.
Yeah.
So you go 5, 7, 9, 11. You actually need more
so
players.
this is the point I'm making. So I all these players I said are not playing. They said, okay, thank you very much. We'll find other teams, or we'll go. And they dropped away. And there's 2 or 3 I'm rotating, and 1 or 2 of them dropped away. And suddenly I've gone from 9-a-side, I've gone to 11-a-side, and I've not got enough players.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we're really struggling now. And the same for these teams who go from 7 to 9. They've got to get more players. To then go to 11, got to get more players again. And there's just a finite number of teams out there trying to find more players and more players and more players. So whilst I applaud the idea, logistically, it's an absolute nightmare.
I mean, I would love, and again, maybe the FA, and again it'd be logistics, why you can almost keep all the way through the age groups, say a 7-a-side league, a 9-a-side league, or whatever.
It runs in parallel.
Yeah. So if you want to go 11, if you've got that team, but there is going to be, like we said with the boys that we had to let go, and maybe you go to 11, so I've only got 10 girls, I can't do it, but you could have run a 7-a-side team.
Yeah.
I mean, the other option I thought, we used to do these 2 7-a-side teams and then go to 1 11-a-side. Why not have just gone, when you wanted to go this 9-a-side, why not have just gone, because the boys are getting bigger, and just go to a slightly bigger pitch with the 7-a-sides.
Yeah, you could
Just
do
play on a
something.
slightly bigger
I
pitch.
know there are a few pitches almost like a small adult pitch. There's a small
Yeah.
11.
Because the boys are getting bigger, fine, just go to a slightly bigger pitch with the 7-a-sides and then combine them to the 11-a-sides. Because it's logistically it's a nightmare. But I understand, because the problem is you get further out, and we play teams like Timsbury or Marksbury, say, and they've got 1 team.
Yeah.
And we play Tubali, and they've got one team, and that's spread from the sort of
Mixture of age groups.
6 to 7, 8 and 9 year olds to get one team.
Yeah.
So I can understand why. Whereas in Bristol, we were all putting out 2 teams of 7 aside. This is obviously the boys, girls. With the new girls team, it's slightly different. I've got the one team, and I've got, I say, about probably 11 regular players.
Yeah.
And I'm going to 7 aside next year, and actually,
That's
regular
perfect.
Players, it's perfect. But even
Then when
if
you go
I get
9v9,
if I get no new players,
then it's a struggle.
I'm 11 aside. I'm going to struggle.
You're
Yeah.
going to fold, and that's why personally I think, again, spatial wise is going to be hard. I would love to see the potential that you keep a 7-a-side league is probably the ideal thing all the way through for certain teams, running in conjunction.
I would argue to be perfect, you need 3 lots of boys, certainly for boys, 3 lots of double 7-a-sides to then combine into however many 9-a-sides, which then combine into however many 11-a-sides, within a club. And then the boys sort of merge and merge and merge down. So you keep, rather than having to find players, you might start with 4 7-a-side teams to become 3 9-a-side teams to become 2 11-a-side. You know what I'm saying?
It's getting that recruitment. I mean,
having to find players later on. It's
certainly
harder.
for the girls. I mean, we're lucky here, but unfortunately there's a club in the A division, the girls, which we're under 10s, 7v7.
Yeah.
One of the top 2 or 3 teams. They are unfortunately looking like they're going to fold.
What, as they transfer to
9v9, they've just not got enough
already
to go. We cannot. We're going to struggle. We've ended up with. I think they've ended up with 10, maybe 11. I think it's just not going to be enough. It's not going to be practical enough, and they're folding at the moment as it stands at the moment. But if they stayed at 7v7, they'd have been fine. But because they've gone 9v9, they've got.
And the problem is, as soon as 1 or 2 say it's not going to work, I'm going to go there, then 1 or 2 others go, oh, well in that case I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got 6 left, and then the 2 of them are going to go, well, I'll go, and it's just gone.
It's gone.
Very quickly it goes.
And they said they're one of the top teams in the area, and that they are unfortunately going to go. And I think, like I said, unfortunately, the girls' league is a classic. I think your under 9s, under 10s, under 8s, there's 3 or 4 divisions.
Yeah.
By the time you get to under 15s, 16s, there's one.
Just one bigger one, isn't
There's
it?
one division. So you think there's, say in the under 9s at the moment with 4 divisions or whatever, 3 divisions, there's, I don't know, so if you say 300 girls playing, by the time you get to under 15s, there's 100 girls playing.
Yeah.
You've lost 200 girls. Now of those 200 that you've lost, potentially 100 would still want to play, but because the other 100 have dropped away, there's no. They said they've got 7 or 8. There's not enough for them to play, so they've stopped. So,
And a lot. But is that the fault of the small-sided game system, or is that because of their teams and falling out of love with the game?
no, I think because if you've gone to 11 aside, I think the small-sided would be ideal.
Yeah.
Personally, I think if you could have if you had a 7-a-side league alongside that 11-a-side league, those 100 girls would probably still be playing football.
So what you're saying is that it's almost a fault of the small-sided setup of constantly expanding.
Yeah. I think you
No.
get to a point I get why you go 11-a-side for the FA and stuff, because adult football is 11-a-side.
That's
and
the
stuff
pathway
like that.
they want.
Yeah.
But like we said, I think in the earlier episode, the training and the fun side for the majority, you'd probably have to say 99% of people who play football, generally who don't make it professional, they like training on why goals is so popular, because 5v5. And in fact, when you get to adult football, the 5v5, 7v7 leagues are probably getting as more popular now as the 11v11 leagues. And yet in youth football, it's this structured 5, 7, 9, 11. But could it, whatever it is, the 5v5, 7v7, 9v9, can it not go alongside it? Would it then keep more people playing football?
I certainly think that we talked in the last episode about 3 versus 3 coming in and talking to ex-colleagues. I think that could be coming soon as the first format of the game.
At what age, out of interest?
Don't know.
Because you can't play
Didn't get
officially.
into it.
You can't play officially. You can't play games under 6 and down. So you must be talking under 7s.
Yeah, more than likely. And whether that happens, how many age groups
How many teams are going to
happens
have?
for?
How many teams are you going to have? If you've got a squad of 15 like some have, here's our 4 teams.
But they will look, if I speak from the FA's perspective, they'll speak of the benefits that changed back in 20.
Oh no, I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying if you've got
they won't think of a grassroots club.
No.
They'll think top line. This is better for everybody. We're going to institute this. How each club goes about it, that's their individual autonomy.
How the leagues do it.
Yeah, and how the leagues adopt it. But I remember that time that came in, so I was teaching then, and football, the English schools at FA, always had a different approach to grassroots football, and it was always that model earlier. So we played, if you were in year, the top end of primary school, if you were in year 6, they'd be playing 9 versus 9 at the weekend, but at primary school level you play 7 versus 7, and that's just part of the course. So I remember we used to often have to say to our girls and our boys in our teams, said there isn't opportunity for you to stand still actually in this game. It's just constant movement because you're playing 7 versus 7. If you're stood still, there's a chance you're out of position, and there would often be a bit of a transition. So I remember going to watch, I didn't have children at that stage, but you'd see grassroots football at the weekend thinking, hang on a minute, there's children in my class. Why are they playing? It was a real shock to me at that time that they weren't playing a smaller version of the game. But I think I appreciate that. I think it will cause some administration challenges, that's for sure. You'll need more adults to run it, to facilitate it. You'll need more people then that are DBS checked. You'll need more people that are first aid trained. You'll need, right down to having more ropes. You'll need more ropes.
Yeah.
There'll be more respect barriers. So there's some big changes. But that'll eventually
come in.
That will gradually come in, and there'll be that period of adaptation where people will be unhappy about it and frustrated.
And I think I've got no issues with 3v3. I think this is a problem. I would like the FA to make it longer. I mean, even 11v11, maybe not come in till under 15s.
Yeah.
And something like that. And
it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting what the next stages are in youth football, because it's one of the most. There's so many changes that happen within youth football, and you think about how big our national game is and how big it is as a worldwide sport. It's, over the last 15, 20 years, the evolution in the game that's happened. If I think the reason why I had to stop playing football was because I wasn't good enough on my feet anymore as a goalkeeper, and there were players that started playing 5-6 years before me who weren't taught to just shell it as a goalkeeper as far as they could and just put it onto a striker's head or put it into the stride of the right winger. They were taught to keep possession, draw somebody in, and then release it. I just think that's why I was so bad at the game come the end of my career, because I was, as soon as anybody passed with the ball, I'd start sweating. Let me get rid of it. I'm just here to stop goals going in. So that's their end target. It's a real challenge, though, I think, for grassroots clubs. I always forget how lucky we are to have, although they're damp at times. How lucky we are to have all those pitches.
We are very lucky.
I think about who plays in Chipping Sudbury. St Nick's. So St Nick's are in a similar position in our league to us in terms of number of players. So we've got 20. We've capped it at 20. We've got a bit of a waiting list, but they've got a similar number. They're one of the teams we always played 2 fixtures against if we had both had the numbers with our single teams. They can't do, and we're talking about next year, and lots of the league teams are talking about what they're going to do next year. They haven't got the facility, the space. The club have said you can't do another team because of numbers, and that will undoubtedly have an impact upon some of those girls, because if Ben, same name as me, can't organise the 2 fixtures on the same day, if then instead of playing with cup fixtures, instead of playing 12, 14, 16 games across the course of the season, they're only playing 4 or 5, then naturally they might look elsewhere. So going back to what you were talking about, I think there are quite a few reasons as to why we might get the dropout rate. Facilities being a challenge. You've got interest level, they just, like you alluded to, they might not just like football anymore. You've got that transition between primary, secondary, puberty comes into it. Actually, they might change, become more body conscious. I don't want to do it. It's not a sport. I can tell I'm not. This isn't something for me. So there's so many different factors that influence that. That's why I come back to what we said in the first episode. Like the fact that Rich has got that number of players out with him, and what have you got, Mark? You've got
33 roughly at the moment.
3 groups, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, and you've maintained that for
2 or 3 years
Yeah.
now, and
It's amazing.
and I mean, again, I think for my team, we're potentially going to lose 4 over over the summer. Who do it, most of them are doing other sports and stuff, but we are gaining potentially up to 10.
Yeah.
So it's
with another manager or two, you'd have enough to create another team.
yeah, but like again,
Got space
the
and
big
everything
issue
else
of
and-
space and
Especially how many 9 versus 9 pitches do we have?
3.
We have 3.
And we can't have any. And again, it's that spatial thing is the issue. But again, if anybody from Goals is listening, it's certainly in Bristol. There is not a Bristol youth league that plays 5v5, 7v7 at Goals. I've looked, and something like that.
Little floodlight league or something like that, like midweek.
Just could they not mark a pitch in a different colour out on a full size pitch that's not being used?
I would have thought so.
Lots of clubs do that. I've
Yeah.
seen that. Lots of clubs
Yeah.
across the half.
Even when we were at Manor Road, they did that.
Yeah.
So
That's what 3G pitches usually, isn't it?
yeah.
If you think about the markings.
Well, we
of a
played
3G
at
pitch.
Hannam, didn't we?
Yeah.
There were 16 boys, and just before we finished it, all they had was a smaller goal on
Yeah.
the full
Right,
size pitch.
yeah.
And as soon as the game did, they walked off, and we went straight on the pitch.
Yeah,
After.
I mean, it can be done. I said people have just got to sometimes think out of the box, basically, and there's lots of
You
people.
certainly
that are
get more
interested.
pitches down here. Just got to sort of mark them differently. Another issue, of course, is if the league implement the actual the changes that the FA made. So
Going true.
So here's one. So the Youth Development Review suggests, so for under 7s and under 8s, even the youngest children will benefit from having the opportunity to play for a little cup 2 or 3 times a season. Children of this age are very egocentric and can only see the here and now, and certainly not the outcome of something in 8 months' time. And they will have 6 weeks of trophy events in a 26-week season. Under 9s and under 10s, as children grow developmentally and cognitively, the periods of competition can increase a bit further as their views of the world start to widen. They can start to interpret results in a more meaningful way, and they should have 12 weeks of trophy events in a 26-week season. And then finally, under 11s, children can now start to understand whether a team beats them because they tried harder or whether they were better players, something they can't often do before this age. As they prepare for secondary school, peer influences start to come into play. 18 weeks of trophy events in a 26-week season. So that was the Youth Development Review's suggestions of 2012. Now, we've discussed this, Mark, you and I. Doesn't happen, does it? The whole 18 weeks of trophy events in a 20-week season. Now, I know when we discussed it last time, you were saying admin was the problem.
Admin is the problem, and again, the league representatives who run the leagues are all volunteers themselves. So to have that, it won't happen. It's not fair on them. I mean, I think as we were today, the Bristol Girls League put out what they want their divisions to be next season. I've heard numerous teams that are not happy. Numerous teams want to change, including somebody at Fry's, after they said what they wanted originally.
And they're in the division they originally asked for.
And now potentially they've now then come back and said no, that they've still not decided. And they're not the only ones. There are clubs that do this, and this isn't fair on the people that then run the leagues, who give up their time to do this, and people are actually, because they are only looking out for their own self-worth, their own club, their own individual things, and not looking at the whole wider picture. So it won't happen.
And of course, going off topic slightly, last year, as we both recall, there were teams entering right up to the last minute, and the leagues were having to redo this. So having to do fixtures right up to the last minute because teams are coming in, and then saying, oh, by the way, you need to produce 18 weeks of trophy events for under 11s. It's just really not feasible, is it?
We had lots of teams fold last minute. A team in Bristol was meant to enter 3 and ended up only entering 1 team, and just interest fell away last minute. I mean, it's hard enough with the spring and the autumn cups, which is 4. Each one of those is 4 fixtures in total, if you include the last round. I mean, we played the last round of ours in. It was pretty much our last game of the season.
Yeah,
yes, we did.
Ours was the last game, was the final. And
so having to sort those fixtures out constantly is a really
and it goes against,
challenge, isn't it,
I said, I think we've discussed, it goes against the ethos of development up to non-competitive football, non-published results, up to under 12s.
It does.
And yet these cup fixtures are published.
It does, but this is the whole point, that as they get older, that the players can understand that teams are beating them because they're either better players or they tried harder, and that was the point. However, I agree there, but I also agree with what they're saying. So I would have thought still have the same number of cup competitions. It's just the people playing them now understand the reasoning behind it, perhaps.
Yeah, and again with the cup
you
competitions,
don't need to have more of them.
No, and again with the cup competitions and the way they say we do here in Bristol with the Hannah Minor and the Bristol Girls League, what I find in our division, which we're in, every result, all our results were within 1 or 2 goals.
Okay.
We've then played cup games, and you've had to manage it because you're going above the. It's ridiculous. It's not fair. We had
Some
one.
of the teams have played,
Yeah,
it's
we
unmatched.
had one game, and we were 4-5-0 up after about 8 minutes, and from that moment, both coaches were trying to manage it to make it so it's not embarrassing for either side, and trying to get something out of it. For a prospect of where the opposition who we were playing, they weren't getting anything out of it. What we were teaching our girls, they weren't getting anything out of it. So as a development game, it was a waste of time because it was neither team was getting anything out of the game.
Yeah, if I can just quantify what I meant by my last statement, what I mean is under 7s and under 8s, when you play your 3 or 4 cup games, to the children it means nothing. It's no different than the week before. So to the coaches it is. It's a cup competition, yay, we're doing it. But the children means nothing. Whereas by the time you reach under 11s, if you still playing those 3 or 4 week cup competitions, at that point they understand it better. And I think that's what it should be, rather than going for this 18 weeks of trophy events. Keep it the same 3 to 4 weeks, but the children understand it better. And then that's when you can perhaps, for my team in the cups. And under 7s, under 8 cups, we wouldn't make no difference to us because the children, it means nothing to them.
Exactly.
By under 11s, the children are more invested in it.
They are.
So you can be a bit more sort of competitive because they're like, oh, it's a cup. This means something to us.
And I said my team won their spring cup final and we made it a big event. But I also think potentially you do have to, I mean, even in like the professional league, you've got the lower league trophy for the 3rd and 4th divisions to make it an even competition that they have a chance of going. I know you've got the FA Cup and stuff for the romance, but I think at that age I'd rather, you do have to have it so it's even games. These, like they said, you see the score lines, the 20-0 games, what's the point? With these cup games you can get those 20-0.
Well, yeah, because I think Simon and I discussed in our last pod that exactly that. We knew in both our cup competitions that we wouldn't make a final because we were in A division, and I think we lost something like 9-0 one of our games because we were in with A division teams. So we knew we had no chance straight away. We just absolutely no chance. So, and this is say small-sided games to give everyone a fair chance and more touches. Well, we weren't getting more touches. We had a lot less touches because
one team was more dominant.
Absolutely, they'd arranged it or not arranged it.
I don't know if we're going to go on to talk about it, and it's something we've discussed as a club around, and certainly in the under 9s league around the power play rule and
let's do it now.
its usage.
Let's do it now.
So we played a team who was a new team this year, and it was in the first round of the Spring Cup. The second round, and very much like you described, I don't think our girls know any different whether it's a cup game or a league game. So it's just another game. I don't really talk about it in any detail. Sometimes I talk to parents and say, if you might, this is actually one of our cup fixtures, so they know about it. And they had played one of the teams from our A division in their first round. They're a brand new team in the C division. Played a team at the top of the A division who are outstanding football team, brilliant team. And he told me the scoreline of the game, and my instant reaction was, wow, that must have been awful. I think I said, oh well, that's shocking, something along those lines. I would take it back. He said, yeah, it was a really hard experience for the girls. It was one of our first games. They found it really, really tricky. So yes, they were playing a team from our A division, and that was my reaction. So I was quite shocked, and I said, are you aware of the power play rule? And he was a relatively new coach, a new leader of that team. He said, no, I'm not aware of that. He said, I'll tell you what, I will do it today. because I know the team you're playing against, and if you have played against, and our girls, I don't think it would be quite as extreme, but our girls have played together for a long time, so they may well be very competent, and we may well score a few goals today. And I described it to you, said, that'd be great if we could do that, and actually that would be really useful for a couple of my girls, just give them a bit more of a confidence boost. So we did it, and after, I think, into the third quarter, the gap was such that I said, now would be the time there's a gap of 4 goals, now would be the time we could put a player on. And it was a much better challenge for my girls and the players. They had another player to think about on a smaller space, right? They're going to play with 3 defenders instead of 2 defenders. So how do we solve that problem? What might we need to do? We might need to make the pitch even bigger, and we might to stretch them and maybe shift the ball from one side to the other, and actually maybe going forward quickly might help to get past these players. And maybe we're going to have lots of people around us and coming towards us, so it might be quite tricky. The press is going to be difficult. So it was a good challenge for us, and they weren't on the receiving end of a tonking, and they actually scored one of their first goals that they'd ever scored, and it was a really nice kind of almost like moment of learning for everybody. And he said at the end of the game, he said, "I'm really pleased you told me that, because now I can say that, because I feel like that's going to happen again for us, and now I can have like a conversation with confidence about this. That's an introductory rule from the FA." But I was shocked when going on from that, I thought the power play rule was something that the Bristol Girls League had established. I just thought it was introduced when I was at the FA. It was talked about during my time at the Football Association, so I just thought blithely. I thought loads of leagues adopted it. I thought, it's part of the course. It just makes sense. So obviously there's a mercy rule, but that's a 10-goal rule, and that just is not really appropriate for anybody in terms of learning. If you're getting beaten 10-0, if you're just putting a 10-0 scoreline for the sake of the website, it's not helping anybody. And we just adopt it in the under-9s league. There's just an understanding that amongst all the other teams that we would use this. Some refuse at times, and maybe we'll come on to chat about that. But it was something that I thought I need to suggest this, and hopefully it's then going to become in as and adopted, because the committee have noticed that over a third of the games that are played across the mini football age groups there's a team that has won by a goal margin of more than 4. And they were thinking of things that they could do that would affect a change of that. They had the mercy rule as a standard, the 10-goal mercy rule, but they wanted something else, and I made them aware of it, sent them the mini football and futsal handbook, and they weren't sure that they could do it and that it was something that existed. So that hopefully should be introduced next year to the Bristol Girls League across those age groups, which not always is it going to have an impact, but now it's something that is a rule. It will reduce those times where, and you've had it happen to you, where teams have either refused to use it or refused to allow us as a team to implement it.
Yeah, I mean, Mark and I, we discussed this a number of times on pods in the past, because we were aware of it as a concept. It was just, to us, something that just seemed, not for the managers, just for the children we were playing against,
sensible,
just unfair. We were winning by that score, or they were beating us by that score. It stemmed actually from our first game, didn't it, when we lost 26-1. And I thought, okay, it's happened to us, but I'd hate to do that to somebody else. And by under 8, we were playing teams and were doing that, and so we'd go across and say, let's put some players on. And fun enough, Mark will tell you some stories, but it never happened that anyone refused. They were just like, oh, thank you very much. And even this year, with under 8 girls, I've spoken to 1 or 2 managers new, and they've said, oh, can we? I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just go ahead, and they've done it. Over to you, Mark, because you've had a different experience.
Yeah, people, they think you're being rude, I had one team we were beating by a lot, very quickly, and I would say to their manager, look, feel free to put extra on, feel free to do, no, they've got to learn to lose. And so, well, okay. So then I started putting my goalkeeper up. I'm trying to do 3 passes, 5.
To level it out yourself.
And it got to the point we had girls, and I said certain girls they couldn't score. They were getting all the way to the goal line, putting a ball on the goal line, and then somebody else who hadn't scored came in and knocked it in. It was ridiculous. We got nothing out of it, but he refused to put extra on. And then I could quite easily, could have taken girls off, but they've come to play football.
Yeah, and if you've got an equal playing time policy,
Yeah.
you're not willing to play,
Yeah.
they've turned up to play football.
Yeah,
then,
some bet on are your girls if the opposition manager is so sort of argumentative, restricted.
And that's sadly is the issue is with that coach, that manager, is it's their perception of the game, and they can't remove, and which is often the case and happens quite regularly, and we will all come across coaches and managers like this that can't remove the concept of their perception of what football should be like and how they've grown up with football, and the idea of winning at all costs versus an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old learning something new for the first time, and the impact that could have on them. And
they're so bloody minded.
Yeah, I mean, I've had it happen once where I suggested it, and it was when we were an under-8s team, and I said to the player, the team before the game, I said, "There's a good chance here. We've scored quite a few goals recently. There's a good chance here that we could score quite a few goals quickly. Where this person's turn is this person's turn to play up front today, as the striker in a 5-a-side team, and they're very effective. And lo and behold, we went 4-0 up very, very quickly in the first 10 minutes. And I said to the manager, would you like to put on an extra player now? Because with this scoreline, they said, no, I want the players, I want the girls to lose properly, was the phrase they used.
That's exactly what he said to me.
And that, again, that for me, that's a phrase that is associated again with not a lack of understanding around learning and development and a young person's enjoyment in an activity.
I'd be angry if I was a parent in that team. Personally, if I was hearing that, I'd be wanting to know why are they not letting us put another player on.
Yeah.
Personally, you know. But
it's that real separation. Then again, I think an important mind shift, I think, for all coaches is to realise that the game is is a learning event at this age group.
Yeah.
And like in youth football, it's a learning event. It's part of your training process. It's part of your coaching package, if you like, of what you do throughout the week. And actually, we often say this is what we'd love to see you try today, and it's something we've been working on for the last couple of weeks. So we've been working a lot recently on receiving the ball on the back foot to play forward quickly, and then to be able to turn quickly with the ball and advance up the pitch quickly and penetrate and go forward. So every time we see that in training, we reward it with an extra goal or whatever it might be, and that's what we're looking for today. So it's not necessarily we're looking at the final scoreline. That's brilliant. If we win, fantastic. But if we see this happening loads and loads and loads, then that's going to make us really happy, really excited, and that's something we should celebrate. If you see someone else doing it in the team, if you see a friend of yours doing it, that's what we want to see a high five for and those kind of things, because that's part of the learning environment that we want to create. And I think it's a shift, though. I appreciate that, and it's a shift for some people because the game is the game, and if you love football, then you watch whatever league team you watch at the weekend, then the focus is on the end result. But there's a big difference between the adult game and what young people play, and how we teach that game more effectively is focusing on the learning as opposed to the outcome. Focus on the process and not the end result, the outcome.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, going back to the small-sided matches and the way when it was brought in, this is from The Guardian actually in May of 2012. So it followed consultations with young footballers, and they explored how other European countries organised children's football development, and that's why they moved to these small-sided games. Because one of the reasons was that Sir Trevor Brooking admires Spain's passing game. And the idea was the changes would replace the current system, which was 7v7, which was played up to under 10 level, and after which, under 11s onwards, the children would play 11 aside on a full-side pitch. And it was seen as a massive step forward for the future of children's football. And the Daily Mirror reported that some of the more successful countries in world football, such as Spain, France and Italy at the time, do not play 11 aside until until the under 14 level. So actually, looking at that, they don't play it to under 14 level. It's actually later than even we've gone to doing that now, but we've actually still gone earlier than they have. Did we go too late? Have we gone too early? Or will this 3v3 now shift that up a bit?
I would imagine that will have an impact. It'd be interesting to see if they lengthen
because officially you can't go competitive until 7v7. You can't play any games officially until you're under 7s. Even though I see under 6 tournaments and under 6 matches being played and all that sort of thing. But officially you're not supposed to play till you're under 7s. So bring in 3v3 at that stage, I would think there should be a shift to the right.
Everything will move up.
Yeah.
A couple of, at least 2 years or so on and so forth. Yeah. I mean, certainly if you look at, when I started at the FA in 2017, there was a period where the age group teams, from the under 17s, under 19s up to like the 21s, did incredibly well at World Cup competitions and European competitions, either winning or...
We were actually, yeah. There was one year where we won. Did we win the sort of the 17s, the 19s and the 21s, even 23s, or reached the finals or all of them?
And part of the evidence base around those players is obviously there's a multitude of things that makes a player an outstanding player, but that age group of player who was born in around the 2000, 2001, 2002 all grew up in their grassroots clubs and in their pro clubs, and lots of them would have been pro clubs quite early, playing that alternate format of the game, not going too early into 11 versus 11, but playing small-sided games for much longer, for a much longer period. And that's, again, why the argument will continue for a long time around what is like the sweet spot, the perfect spot for age groups and what format of the game they should be playing, what's an appropriate pitch size, what's the appropriate number of players on the team, how it relates to the bigger version of the game in terms of positioning and understanding of like pitch geography. But I think there'll be maybe some more slow incremental changes, and that will, I should imagine, those successes within England especially will be highlighted as the evidence base for further changes. So it'll be interesting to see if and when the 3 versus 3 stuff comes in, like you say, which age groups it starts in and what shift that will then happen as it moves up through a grassroots club.
It'll be interesting to see what difference it has on things like ball contacts, short passes, long passes. I say that because another study for you, Clement et al. In 2012 in the Journal of Physical Education and Sport. Results suggest that the less number of players increase the intensity of the game. It was analysed that mean heart rate each game reduced gradually as the same number of players increased. At the same time, the number of players decreased, the number of ball contacts by each player increased. And according to these results, suggested that the less players may increase the ball contacts by each player. I mean, these sort of things, it kind of seems intuitive, but it's nice that studies back it up.
Yeah.
But basically, the results from this study, there was 2 things they cite. A Jones and Drust from 2007 report that said in 10 minutes, 4v4 game, there were 36 plus or minus 12 ball contacts, whereas an 8v8 game, there were just 13 plus or minus 7 ball contacts. So the difference between 4v4 and 8v8 in number of ball contacts was sort of 20, at least 20 different, 20, that's right, yeah. So 36 roughly ball contacts in a 4v4 in 10 minutes, whereas 8v8 you only have 13 touches on average. And then Katis and Kellis from 2009 study, 4 times 10 minutes, 3v3, there was on average 48 short passes and 5 long passes, whereas a 6v6 on average 34 short passes but 11 long passes. So the difference in going to 3v3, you're looking at the difference in the short pass and the long pass game, and also when the ball contacts and in the sort sizes. It all makes a difference in how you play and how you improve and how technical ability, all those things are different and matter. But can that also be detrimental in terms of our improvement and our what's the word for it? Our progression? And I'll say this because I'll go on to my last study that I've got written down. My last study, yes, sorry. So this was Kazimikana on the Barcelona Innovation Hub. So it says, in recent years, we've seen a number of new studies that describe the demands of competition in several sports, with several focus in these moments of maximal activity. These small-sided games do not appear to allow players experience situations close to to those demanded by official matches in terms of total distance covered and runs performed at high speed and at a sprint. Given that much literature has emerged in recent years supporting the need to include sprint stimuli in athletes' preparation with the objective of minimising injury risk, it seems appropriate to supplement training with other types of practices. Furthermore, as we seek to optimise our players' state of physical conditioning, it seems necessary to include stimuli that approach or even exceed the demands of competition. Playing situations with larger spatial dimensions, finishing situations involving few players and a large space, analytical situations focused on intermittent running or repeat sprints may be alternatives to this process of optimising the player's state of physical conditioning. Essentially what they're saying is that the small-sided games, you're not giving them that match level of fitness, intensity, so when they get there suddenly, when they get onto a bigger pitch, they're not conditioned for it because they're just doing these small-sided games. So is there a drawback to that? Much as we don't want to do, let's do the boggy runs and that sort of thing. And I would never do that. To me, if you're going to do runs, you still have to have ball at your feet. There has to be games, surely, where you put them onto a bigger pitch and they're not conditioned for it.
I think, developmentally, the size of the playing area that a young person plays on has to match their physical development. And there's always a rush to move children up to the next age group, and we feel that kind of pressure to move them up to the next age group to a bigger pitch size. But actually that can be detrimental if we put someone in an environment that actually is way too big for them, and physiologically they haven't developed enough to participate in that action on that size of a pitch. However, if you've never played on a bigger pitch, if you've never tried to play a pass over a longer distance, how do you know what that feels like? And if we can provide opportunities in our training where we can, especially in those transitional periods, so for next year will be a transitional period come the back end of next season for the under-10s girls, as you'll find. You'll find it now. So you're going to be on a bigger pitch, a bigger goal.
Yep.
Having an experience in the summer months of what that feels like.
Which was started and they're going to offsides and stuff like that.
Exactly. It's going to be really, really important for them to know what that... So because actually I can play a pass here. We think about Man City at the top end, actually. We often think about them as playing lots of short passes and triangles, but actually they're very effective at playing. Look at Edison at playing a long ball into space, like onto somebody, into somebody or beyond somebody is an incredibly effective form of football.
But you won't give them the opportunity if you're just doing small-sided games. No. And that's what those studies are basically saying. And also you won't give them the fitness levels to progress to that next level, or even last a 40-minute game on a small-sided pitch if you're just doing small-sided little things. And I think that's possibly part of the problem.
I think there are lots of counter studies around the cardiovascular impact of small-sided games that would probably counter that. And I think we've talked about those earlier in terms of the number of short runs, the change of direction that happen in small-sided games. I think for us as a grassroots club, when we're just training once or twice a week, the impact we can have on a young person's cardiovascular fitness is relatively minimal. If they're not an active person, I think about your daughter, who goes swimming, who goes to football, park runs, who walks everywhere, bike, that kind of thing, is an active person, is part of an active family who model physical activity constantly. I never not see you here in sports kit or doing something. Then that has a wider impact upon, a much bigger impact upon a young person's ability to maintain energy levels and have a cardiovascular take part in a bigger game of football than us doing more running. And you're right, I would especially in the context of girls football, where they don't get the opportunity to play on a daily basis like lots of boys do in school and informally in local areas, in their parks, in their yards, in the playground, whatever. Our time is better spent working on
skill,
technical ability, skill development.
Totally agree.
I mean, it's not fun. Also, you can disguise. And don't get me wrong, you can disguise things, but the game is a great preparation tool for.
Yes, and I
demands of the
think the FA has now got itself into a sort of somewhere in limbo. I think the way that they do it at the moment, you know, the 5v5, 7v7 and so on, you will get teams, because they expand from 7, well, it's obviously at 5v5 you need 8 to 10 players, so you get these, and you might have 2 games and stuff, certainly in the boys, and then it gets to a certain level when you get 9v9, you need, in the boys section, you need 22, 23 boys, and even the girls, but constantly at 9v9, say in the girls where there is only one game, you need probably a squad of 14, 15 maybe.
Or 16 if you're planning for 11 at that point.
But yeah, but they're also then going to be having, because if you've got, say, a squad of 16 at 9v9,
which is what we did. Remember, for the boys, we did that with the boys.
But you've got, I mean, I would own, in December, I wouldn't want more than 3 subs, because they're sat on the side.
And the back 5 to us, did it? Our last boys did kind of back 5 for us, trying to keep everyone together for the 11 side.
Yeah, but you just wouldn't. You're then having to rotate them out. So say 4 girls, so they're only going to be playing. They're playing less. You then go to the 11 side, and you see. So you go, right, we're going to go with 13, and then when you go to 11 side, you haven't got enough, and that, because they now rush it. I mean, I think, like you said, with the boys and stuff, you go with, say, 2 teams all the way up to 9v9. Is it 2 9? Or was it 2 at 7v7 and then 1 9v9?
We tend to go 2 at 7v7. We always used to be 2 at 7v7, then go to 1 11 aside. The problem with the 9 aside is, do you then try and get more to go for 2 9s, or carry a few extra at 1 9, or just get rid of some players at 1 9? And then get more back, and so that's always the problem. But that's what the boys tend to do.
And so you get. I mean, I hear all the time of clubs having to let boys go at 9v9, and when they get to 11-11, they fold it because they ain't got enough.
They'd like them back again.
Yeah.
Well, they're gone, and they're folded.
And so personally, I mean, I don't know how far that would be from the FA, even if it's on their radar of just saying, right, we will. On the side of it, if you want to stay at 7v7, you just stay at 7v7, because then that will keep some teams going.
Depends on the size of the area, and I say this thinking of somewhere like the Midsummer Northern League, where there are some divisions, even at younger age groups, where there's only 6-7 teams. And so you've got 3 or 4 who want to stay at 11 aside, or 9 aside, and 2 or 3
but
who want to stay at 7 aside.
If they've only got 6 or 7 teams, again, potentially, then they'd have to go to a bigger area, but you'd have more kids playing.
No, but that's what's happened. No, this is what's happened, which is why you've now got Portishead, say Milton Nomads came to the Hannah, Islington, and the boys, they've come to the Hannah Minor League.
Yeah.
The other teams are now coming to the Hannah Minor League and even Youth League, because they're slowly pulling out of that league as more and more teams depart it. But those who are left who can't, they're like, well, there's 6 teams left, and 3 of us want to play 9v9, and 3 of us want to play 7v7, and whereas in Bristol we've got loads, so we have enough.
But I think surely the main aim is to have more children.
Totally agree. But I think it would be. I think it might fall apart in those smaller rural areas where there's just not enough children generally.
Change mindsets. I think mindsets are saying, we're going to play. Well,
I think in those areas it almost has to be we can only do 7v7 just because we're a smaller rural area, and that might actually save those leagues.
Yeah,
in a way.
And I think that's where the county FAs come in, and they have their responsibility, because they know the makeup of their county better than anybody, and what's going to work in certain areas. You know,
exactly. And I think
I think about Cornwall. We used to do a lot of work down in Cornwall. You know, the idea of just travelling 15 minutes for us to go and play Downend, or 15 minutes to go and play Bristol Rovers Supporters Club is alien. It's, if you're playing a game of football, you're travelling a good distance, and you're spending a good amount of time for a young person in a car to go and play a game. Yeah. Because of the nature of that county and where people are.
One distance, 2 roads.
Yeah, exactly that. And heaven forbid you've had loads of games delayed and you've got to play in the summer months, because it's going to be you and 300,000 other people that are on holiday.
All the tourists, yeah, absolutely.
very tricky. But that they, again, a little bit like the Bristol Girls League. I think county FAs quite rightly get a lot of critique for what they do, but they do have a very challenging job in terms of advising leagues and what about around best practice and how to organise certain things and where adaptations can be made. It's a tough
gig.
job.
Yeah, it's a tough gig. Job. I mean, and again, I don't know enough about, say, the FA and the hierarchy, and this is going off subject of the small-sided game, but we've looked to get a women's team playing 11-a-side football.
Yeah.
We started this in December. We have our final hurdle to get over on June the 3rd. 6 months that's taken voluntary people who don't, who do it out of their spare time, and it's taken us 6 months. We've gone all the way to Wembley. A little team in Catesham trying to set up a women's team to go in the bottom division of the county league, and the application and all the things, we've had correspondence all the way back from Wembley, and now we've had to work all the way up to get there. Now we're working all the way back down, and now we've got the teams, and now we've got to finally say, because we've jumped through so many hurdles, it's enough to go about April or May to say, actually, this ain't flipping worth my time, and it will put people off. They have to make it a bit simpler, realise that people are volunteers.
Yeah. Now they put that to a small-sided game where the team have gone from 7 to 9 players and they're struggling because they've gone from 7 to 9 players because of these rules. Yeah.
And I think they're magnified in the women and the girls game because although it's growing exponentially and has done over the last 5-10 years, there are still, if you look at some of the Southern Premier League that some of the local clubs to us play in, they're travelling huge. They're going down to Liscard. They're travelling huge distances to play the adult version of the game in what should be is a regional league, but because of the nature and the number of clubs that are able to participate at that level, there isn't like the Western League. You think about the Western League in the men's game. Well, until it's recently involved the Cornish clubs, that was pretty much a Bristol league, really. Yeah. The prem of that was mainly you'd be travelling around West Wiltshire, North Somerset, and Bristol, really.
I mean, I said being Fry's, if you're around the area, obviously Catesham was our local rivals. But when you hear, again, for the FA and things where they get fined, Catesham adult team last year, I think they had a game, like you said, in Cornwall. Yeah, the standard. And it got and they were having to then. I think they made 2 coach trips or so that cost them £2,000-3,000 to get everybody off of work, to hire the coaches out, to get them all the way down there, and stuff. I mean, that's ridiculous amount of money. But that's going off the small side of the game. But again, I think, and again, I feel for the FA because you're not going to please everybody. Every area is different. Do I think I personally don't think it probably works how it is at the moment. I think you lose too many players.
But is that because the boys don't lose so many players because they're much more established, whereas the girls' game is still growing? And if the girls was just as established as the boys, we'd be in a better position because the boys game I was playing in the Hand Minor League, and I'm in my 50s now. We had back then we had 1 division, but there's 15 teams, and by the time I was managing, there was 4 divisions, and that was only 10 years later. So the boys game as well, whereas the girls team game is just still really relatively in its infancy. Yeah. So is that one of the reasons why it's struggling? Because it's still fairly infancy in that sense.
Potentially, but unfortunately, I think
as long as it continues to grow like it has,
there's not enough understanding. Potentially in a lot of grassroots clubs, it's still run. I mean, I said I'm 50 and obviously myself. It's run by middle-aged to old-age men who
grew up playing kick and run football themselves.
But who don't appreciate the women's game. We've had issues here with sexism and stuff like that. Yeah, it happens.
Wouldn't even think of implementing the mercy rule or power play because how dare you say that?
But they wouldn't even. You get some clubs. We've had it here. I train here always. This age group's trained here, and yet a female who might need to use the facilities It's certainly at a younger age when things might be happening, there's no consideration. That will put girls off. Being body conscious, obviously, with their kits will put girls off. So there's lots of things which potentially the people who are running it don't understand. To be fair to Somerset, the ladies, and it is now ladies who are doing the girls' side, are fantastic. And in fact, even I know on Gloucestershire it is now more run by the females. I think potentially clubs, certainly grassroots clubs, amongst their committee, amongst hierarchy, will probably need, if you're going to have a female section, have a female person who understands.
And more education.
And definitely more learning, because I said I've been doing the girls for 4 or 5 years and I'm learning stuff daily.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons we look at the Bristol Girls League, why there are actually a lot of girls-specific clubs that are being created, because actually what you say is right, it is a different game, it is a different environment, it's something that actually we want to do something that's quite unique here, and there's a brilliant energy around women's and girls football at the moment, and to harness that and create something special is what a lot of clubs have done. And I think you will see a lot of, if it's a junior club, I think you will see quite a natural divide happening between boys and girls sections at times, if, as you just mentioned, Mark, if the players within the girls section, and if it goes up to women's team like we have here, don't feel like they're not being treated equally.
Yeah.
And quite rightly. Why is that the case in 2020, whatever, 24?
Yeah, I mean, it has been discussed off the thing that we are now almost at this club, potentially. We could go separately. We could have the female section separately, because there is not enough understanding within certain members of the consideration for it, and I hope that doesn't happen. But you're right. I can see why clubs would suddenly have.
Done it.
Why clubs split? Yeah, why clubs like Emerson's formed when they broke away from Cadbury Heath, for instance.
Yeah,
it happens because there's a falling out within the management structure, and they don't feel they're not getting what they should be, and suddenly they break away and form whole clubs.
Yeah.
Okay, we've come away completely from small-sided games. So getting back to it, Mark, any last thoughts on playing and the whole ethos of the small-sided games in terms of matches? We did training last pod. This one was small-sided games in terms of the matches, the format, in terms of playing it. Anything else you want to do?
No, I said small-sided games I think are very good. I think there needs to be a bit more, like I said, more clear and understanding, and it might need to go on longer. I think we rushed to 11-a-side. We rushed to big goals. I mean, bless them. I think it was under 13. I've seen under 13 goalkeepers studying the full-size goals, and you look at it and think, if that goes high, it's going in. Well, that and you will get teams that can dispute it. If you're going to do it, it might need to be slower. You might not need to go to it. Why not go 11-a-side at under 15s?
Or even under 18.
Yeah. Why even have it?
I say that because our goalkeeper, we're under 16s, just finishing, still has the ball go over at times.
Yeah, they're still growing. Yeah. Boys are still growing. The girls, again, they grow quicker. Again, this is an understanding. You look at the females, so the girls could be almost at their full height by 12 or 13.
Yeah.
But they might not have that physical ability. You don't want to discourage people, and that's where I think potentially there has to be a bit more clearer guidelines on what it is. I think the FA want the small-sided games, they want equal, and they want all this. Then just don't rush the competitive and how they.
Yeah, it marries up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ben, last thoughts on the small-sided game and in terms of playing and matches and the format and setup and everything.
I think the changes that happened in the early 2000s have had a massively beneficial impact upon the game, and I appreciate there was a learning curve and a period of transition that, with any change, caused lots of issues amongst grassroots clubs. At that time I was unaware of, because I wasn't in that world, but I can see how that would cause problem, and I can see how when future changes do occur, which I think undoubtedly they will. Again, 3 versus 3 has been talked about heavily, whether they shift the age groups that children play at certain sizes and pitch sizes and certain team sizes, whether that shifts as well. It shifts up, so they play a smaller sided version of the game longer. There's going to be another period of transition when that happens that will cause grassroots clubs across the board of varying, even if they've got a big facility like us or not, it's going to cause some teething problems. But I do believe that will then have a really positive impact on the development, the learning, the enjoyment of ultimately the most important people, and that's the children playing the game. When do you stop there, I suppose, is the question. Yeah. When do we, like you, as Mark sort of alluded to there, ultimately the big version of the game, the final version of the game is 11 versus 11, and that's been the case since the game was since its inception, and that's what we will work towards, is that final version of the game. When is it the right time to expose somebody to that environment? You know, that's the trick.
And I said it's not easy, is it, to get the answer right? And you're not going to please everybody however you do it. But
I think my biggest problem, and I think I might have said this either on the last pod or earlier on this one, forgive me if I have, my biggest problem is the 7 to 9 to 11, the having to either lose players or gain players, and probably a minority of 2 or 3 here. I feel that it would be better if they went from the 2 7s playing on a 7-a-side pitch to the 2 7s just playing on a bigger pitch before they went to the 1-11, rather than going to 1-9. Keep them as 7s. Just if you want to go bigger, then just go onto a bigger pitch, because they outgrow the 7-a-side pitch. Yes. But it's that going to a 1-9, losing players, and then having to get players back, and you lose players in football because people won't keep a massive squad for 1-9-a-side team, and they sometimes can't get these two 7s to big 2 9s.
Yeah.
I feel the only difference I would say is, why not just keep the 2 7-a-side and just play on a slightly bigger pitch and do it that way before amalgamating into 11-a-side, and by all means make it later. So don't go until you're under 10, under 11, under 12 to the bigger pitch, or under 13 to the next size up. So move it up, but I would get rid of the 9-a-side personally. That's just my own personal opinion. But yeah, but move them up that pitch later by all means.
Yeah.
But just keep them on a bigger pitch, but as they get bigger. So you're keeping the 2 7s together and then they're amalgamating into 1 11-a-side. So teams are not struggling to lose players, get players back, lose players, get back. I think we do lose children from football at that period.
Those transitions.
Yeah. Just because there are enough people out there saying, no, I've got too many here. Oh damn, come back. And we've gone too late. We haven't got enough players, but sorry, we haven't got a team.
Yeah.
So that's just my final thought. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Well, that's it, listeners. I hope you enjoyed our discussions on the small-sided games. As ever, thank you, Ben. Very kind of you.
No problem.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And listeners, I hope you enjoyed it, and listen out for the next one. Thank you very much. If you like this podcast, then please email us your questions, comments, random thoughts, anything you want to share with us at greengrassroots@gmail.com. You can contact Mark and Andy through X at Fry Club JFC, or Ben at Red Falcon JFC, on Facebook via Fry Club Junior FC, or Red Falcon Sport. The Fry Club JFC website is www.fryclubjfc.co.uk, and the Red Falcon Insta page is at Red Falcon JFC. You could also type out a fantastic review on Apple Podcasts or give us 5 stars on Spotify. You've been listening to a We Haven't Got a Clue What We're Doing production, produced and edited by Andy Glover.